the black zone and basically topped the bad league, as it were, and that caused thousands of headlines around the world. There was we were waiting for the avalanche for the public. It didn't happen. There was we were hit a few times. Maybe we got like 500 emails compared to 20,000. So something had started to happen. The halo had started to drop. And the most recent hit, which is Street View, I can say, hand on heart, we got 20 emails complaining. 20 emails saying, get your hands off Google, we think they're cool. And they're probably from Google people, I don't know. But, but what I'm saying to you is that there has been, the trajectory has been extraordinary in terms of the drop in people's image of Google as the do no evil, they can do no harm sort of company. Maybe it is, and you say in the last 6 months, there's been a sea change. I would agree that there has, certainly in the last 3 months. Jeff says, posed the question, how many people are worried about using Google products? You wouldn't have been able to ask that poll 5 years ago. Everybody thought the products were infallible. Now half the room doesn't. So maybe it is that when the cool of Google disappears from inside Mountain View, when everybody starts to realise they're just players with responsibilities in yet another global company, and they've got to do things the right way, at that point things will change. But let's get rid of coolness, and that's started to happen now.
Paolo?
Well, very briefly, I think we also have to think that the average user maybe does not understand what Google can do with his MAC address or IP address or intercepting some bytes of communication. So what I see, what I have witnessed in the last months has been a charge against Google that possibly was the action was taken by competitors. Google went to the press a lot of time. Google was in the press a lot of time. And that's actually stimulated debate and the awareness of the users. But users were not reached before. And I think users see them now when they read something like IP address, MAC address, and they just say, don't bother. Does Google Gmail deliver my email? That is fine, no problem. Can I reach this place without asking 10,000 times because I can look it up on Google Maps or Street View? Fine, no problem. So, yeah, that's
Gentleman in the corner.
I sort of worry that I'm frighteningly naive about this, but a lot of what both the panelists have said is that Google is essentially going to give us really targeted adverts. They're going to make a small fortune off of adverts. Now, I don't object to big companies making a small fortune. I think as soon as a company becomes ubiquitous, people become sceptical. I think that's fine. But I still don't see any bad thing, or in fact I see an advantage. I want adverts for better, more relevant products. I don't want another advert for an MBA credit card. I find this whole debate seems predicated on a principle which is incredibly important, but risks completely forgetting the massive advantages that these so-called privacy invasions might bring. And I just wonder whether we need to assess the ground rules, not what rules that we've got that were built for a different age that have been broken.
You would, of course, consent, though, to being targeted in a way that some others would not. And the difference between that and generally using a system that said, I'm happy to consent to being targeted, is that if you were amongst the people whose data was retained on the Wi-Fi system, you were not to know that your data was retained, let alone I knew and consented.
I don't argue with anything that you're saying, but my argument is with the terms of the debate that we're having.
Certainly.
And I think those terms seem very, very antiquated given the world in which we live. If you want to argue about targeted adverts, then it seems to me we should also be talking about Facebook far more than we are talking about Google. But that's a
Briefly? I'm not sure about this. Look, I mean, principles, technology can sometimes temporarily override principles. We happen to believe that one of the core principles to make a civilized society is consent, which is why we believe in opt-in. Okay, it might not suit some businesses, but I'm sorry. And advertising is one of those instances. But if you take a look, for example, this is a very quick example. 100 years ago, the telephone exchanges. Okay, if you use the technology, one of the unfortunate byproducts was people were going to listen in. And that was just the way it went, manual operators. And that lasted until the 1950s in some areas. Now the thing is that we still didn't lose the principle that we've got to work towards a telephone system where people can't and won't do that without proper authority. We didn't lose that principle, except the technology kind of eclipsed us for a while we get it sorted out. I believe the same is for the internet.
We'll take shorter questions this time, particularly for anyone who hasn't asked anything so far. If you want to have a say now, it's your chance.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course,
To the guy
Sorry.
in the room, I think your point is quite good because you were actually stimulating the debate to look at the situation as it is, maybe from different perspectives, like to have really a look on what benefit can providing bringing on the market and for the users. And to some extent, I agree with you. And I think, well, one thing that is a good news in that respect is the fact that actually the convention under date of the European Council that is specifically on profiling has been under revision. And I'm personally involved in the revision, and there are quite a lot of significant changes in this field, which might take more into consideration benefits than privacy protection. But I also agree with him when he says it's important that not just because a new technology is going to give you an immediate advantage, we just take all the privacy data protection right aside, because then we might regret. What if one day you're going to be discriminated for your health record? What if one day you're not going to have insurance coverage because they profile you as a bad customer? What if one day I will get a better price than you in buying, for example, I don't know, a Mercedes, just because they know that I don't like Mercedes, but I like BMW? You wouldn't appreciate it.